Burnout felt horrific. It felt like I was scared of going to bed because I knew I wasn't going to sleep, and my mind was just going to drive me nuts again. It felt like I was never going to feel peaceful again. It felt like my anxiety levels were jammed on high. I didn't tell anybody. I started studying the greatest teachers in the world. I started looking at them on YouTube. I started watching every talk they'd ever done. I started realizing that you're not your thoughts, you're not the emotions, and spending some time acknowledging and practicing that and seeing where it takes you. Just stopping at a traffic light. Every time you hit the red traffic light, that's the trigger. Peter, how present are you now? But you have to rewind far, far more than that and say, can we drop little moments of mindfulness confetti throughout your day so that you're quieting your mind as you go?
What if the best mindfulness coach isn't the calmest person in the room? It's the one who's been through hell and back and learned how to invite stillness in their life afterwards. That's Steve Ware. He didn't find mindfulness in the typical way. He didn't start a blog. He didn't find it at some retreat. He burned out hard. After 20 years in the corporate life at one of the biggest companies in the world, IBM, burnout hit. And his mind was jammed on racing mode, stuck in fifth gear, revving the engine, but no momentum. And he was anxious of going to sleep at night. So he kind of became his own hero in some sense. He went down the rabbit hole of learning everything he could about all of the greats on YouTube. And he actually then found himself at Oxford learning mindfulness and the science behind it. So he's not just someone who does it, he knows the science and the tests and what works. Through curiosity and through practice and showing up, he brought back his life. What struck me most in the conversation with Steve was that he's not going to define mindfulness for you, right? He doesn't hand you the script of what it is. He lets you write your own script. I was last at peace when I ... And each and every one of us can do this, right? We can come up with our own definition. So what I admire about Steve, at 46, he then took a leap of faith. He followed his heart for the first time in his life, and he went into the unknown and started teaching this mindfulness. Can you imagine from 28 years of having a stable income and suddenly no paychecks coming in? At 46. So a massive respect. I think the story is so bloody cool. The big message Steve leaves us is you are not your thoughts. There's a deeper part of you that watches your thoughts and watches your emotions. And it's a part of us that we all have by default, but through the chaos of life, it's covered up with a lot of stuff we don't need. He's not the first one on the podcast to say this. Tom Godfrey said exactly the same. You're not your thoughts, you're the observer of thoughts. And this is the second person, Steve Ware, to say exactly the same. So the challenge Steve leaves us is don't listen to this episode and be like, yeah, I get it. Be more mindful. Yeah. That doesn't work. It's going to change nothing. Knowing is not the answer. It's about practicing, starting small, inviting 5 minutes, 1 minute, when you're having a shower, when you're having a coffee, when you're stuck at a red light. How present are you at that moment? Feel your breath and drop little moments of mindfulness confetti throughout the day, right? That's where change starts. And it's cool because each and every one of us can do that. And so if your calendar is bursting at the seams and if your mind is maybe racing and you feel stressed and your brain doesn't shut off easily and stillness feels like some luxury at the moment for other people, this episode's to you. So I really hope you enjoy Steve Ware as much as I did. Let's go.
Coach me if you can. Coach me if you can. Coach me if you can. Coach me if you can.
Steve, it's an absolute pleasure. Welcome to the Coach Me If You Can podcast. I started this podcast because of stress and burnout and the value of coaching. I think I have a great deal to learn when it comes to stress. I started this podcast structuring chaos, improving clarity in my life, and I keep coming back to the topic of stress, my stress levels.
Thank you. Thanks, Peter. I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to it.
Good. What you do, why you do it.
Yeah, so I guess the first thing to say is I never set out to do this. So I'm the least likely mindfulness teacher in the world in some ways. I didn't grow up with aspirations to, well, I kind of grew up with some aspirations to teach, actually. That was always something in the back of my mind, but I kind of followed a conventional path in the sense that I joined IBM, a huge multinational. They actually sponsored me to go through university, so I actually joined them when I was 18. I did my degree with
Wow.
them, and then I stayed on after. So it's very much a kind of safe job, so to speak, in a huge company, doing tech stuff, and everything was kind of all right. I mean, I had this, I guess, the normal stresses that people go through. And I had some kind of problems, I'd say, in my early 20s. That's when I first started noticing my anxiety levels were high, higher than normal, maybe. But I think the story really gets interesting after I'd been at IBM for about 20 years. So at that time, I would probably say I burned out. And burnout to me is burnout's used very loosely by some people in the same way depression is used very loosely, in the same way, I've got the flu is used very loosely. And I think if you ever have the flu or depression or burnout, you stop misusing those words because you really understand what they mean and the depth of the suffering that goes with them. And so for me, burnout felt horrific. It felt like I was scared of going to bed because I knew I wasn't going to sleep, and my mind was just going to drive me nuts again. It felt like I was never going to feel peaceful again. It felt like my anxiety levels were jammed on high. It felt like I had a mind that was, in some senses, pretty good. I'd got a first class degree, and I was always kind of okay academically and did kind of well at work, but nobody had ever shown me how to look after my mind in that sense. Nobody had ever shown me how to quiet it, to calm it, to work with it. So eventually, I guess all of that kind of stuff caught up with me, and I kind of burned out, and I was looking for something, and I didn't know what that something was. I knew it wasn't medication. I'd had some antidepressants in my early 20s, and I kind of my experience with them was they kind of numbed me, I suppose would be the best way to think about it. So I stopped experiencing the lows or the deep kind of sadness or fear, but it just had me in this middle band of not ambivalence, but kind of
Not the good and the bad.
yeah. People think, well, if you take antidepressants, how happy do you want to be? Peter, how happy do you want to be? Okay, take 5 a day instead of 2. It doesn't work like that. It's kind of, for me, it's my experience anyway, was kind of a shrinking of each end into this. So I didn't really want that. So I was looking around for something else. I'd been through conventional therapy, some kind of analytical psychotherapy, which was helpful. But there was kind of this tiny bit at the back of my mind. And someone said to me, "Why don't you try mindfulness?" Because Google by this time, I think it was 2008, Google first kind of stumbled upon mindfulness or really started taking it seriously. And someone has said to me, "Why don't you try mindfulness meditation?" I've seen some really incredible results. The studies seem pretty good, and I won't use the exact language I used back then, Peter, but it was some pretty coarse swear words to tell them where they could stick their mindfulness books and apps and everything else that related to it. Wasn't into it at all. It felt very new age. It felt very navel gazy. It felt very waste of timey. It felt like something that a macho man like me in a massive corporate shouldn't need, didn't need, would be embarrassed if they admitted they needed it, all this kind of stuff, right? So it came with huge baggage. But I was just able to get out of my own way enough to try it. So I tried it in secret. I didn't tell anybody. But I downloaded an app called Headspace, and I just tried it. This is when Headspace first came out. I think I just tried it for 10 days, and here's what happened. Nothing massive. Such an anticlimax to that story, isn't it? The end of that story really should be, I've leapt out of bed every morning since, Peter. My life's all unicorns and rainbows now. It's the most amazing thing. Mindfulness fixes everything and immediately, and I became this incredible enlightened being. But the reality was, and this is true for most, there was, I wondered, something tiny shifted, right? And I mean tiny. So I felt just a tiny bit less anxious. I felt a little bit less reactive. I wasn't quite so overwhelmed when I refreshed my inbox and there was another 100 emails in there. I wasn't quite so angry when someone cut me up in traffic. There was just tiny little, seemingly insignificant things. If you take them in isolation, they seem very insignificant. But they're enough to really pique my interest. And I thought, Christ, if I discovered something here, this could be huge. This could be massive. This could be the equivalent of me going to the gym for my body. And so I didn't tell anybody. But I started studying the greatest teachers in the world. I started looking at them on YouTube. I started watching every talk they'd ever done. I started reading some of the classic books and and just had this insatiable hunger for this. And the story gets, I guess, interesting a couple months after that, when people did come to me at IBM and they said, "What are you doing differently? Because you're calmer, and we can see a difference in you."
Wow.
So to have that kind of held up to me was really interesting. So the people at work said that to me, and they said to me, they begged me to teach them. They said, "Can you teach us?" So long story short, I brought an 8-week program back into IBM, and I started teaching it. And the results were just insane. And I don't take personal credit for that. I was the facilitator, I was the conduit, but the people did the work, right? And what kind of results lead me to use words like insane? So there was a lady, a manager, who wrote to me and said, "I've come back to work. I've been off work sick for months, and I've come back to work ahead of time as a direct result of this course." I had one guy who said, "I've had high blood pressure for 10 years. It's come down to normal for the first time since we've been working together." And I had another lady who was an amazing, lovely lady. She said to me, "Steve, this has been life changing for me and my family." And I thought, especially when she said that, Isabel was her name. When she said that, I thought, okay, I haven't just got a bunch of grads who are blowing smoke up me and saying, "IBM is the greatest company in the world. We've just joined you. Everything you offer us is brilliant. You're all amazing." This is people who've been there 30 years, who've done the hard yards, who knew how tough it was, especially to be a senior person in that company at that time. It was going through some tough times. So when these people started saying it, actually the whole kind of company sat up and listened a little bit more. It kind of leaked its way into management calls and this kind of stuff. And I did a talk about it. I always feel sorry for this poor lady. So I did a talk, and this lady I was chatting to, she said, "Oh, if you want to say, if you want to do the talk, it's about mindfulness and what it is and the course." And she said, "If you want to say, if anybody's interested in coming on the course," she said, "just give them my name and tell them to drop me an email." And she wrote to me the next morning. She said, "I've got over 500 emails in my inbox." All over the world. And so it kind of went viral, so to speak. And I had this huge demand that I couldn't possibly meet. I was doing this all in my own time. This was a give back, was the term we used. But I created this, I won't call it a monster because it was way prettier than a monster. I created this beautiful thing, and it ended up being the first and only corporate approved mindfulness program in IBM. I believe it's still taught there now, though I left IBM 5 years ago. And I started teaching it. I started teaching it to my colleagues all around the world, and people absolutely loved it. I loved teaching it. It made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. And it was the greatest thing by a country mile that I'd ever did at IBM. I did some wonderful technical things and got outstanding technical achievement awards and all this kind of stuff. But they can't hold a torch really to the difference I helped people make to their own lives. And so when I lost my job in COVID in 2020, and here's where IBM did stitch me up. They gave me, so I'd done 28 years by then, joined in 92, left in 2020. They gave me 15 grand as my statutory minimum. 15 or 12, I've got me thinking now. One of the two. It was a smallish amount. I mean, it's a lot of money, but a small amount considering the years I'd done. So in that moment, I was in this huge predicament. It's COVID. It's 2020. I knew what I wanted to do, Peter, but I'd never listened to my heart ever in my life. Because my head ruled, right? Everything. And my head was still saying at this moment, go and work for Salesforce, go and work for Microsoft, go and work for HSBC, just go and work for a huge corporate that will give you a regular salary, and they'll give you healthcare, and they'll give you paid holiday, and they'll give you that, and they'll give you that. And it'll be another safe job. But my heart was, and this may sound strange to some, but I literally would sit with this. I would sit with this, and I would see how my body would feel, right? There's a great book called The Body Keeps the Score.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing book, right? So
yeah.
Our bodies are full of wisdom. You want to know the answer to the question, your body will tell you. If you can tune into the innate wisdom in your body, we've got brain cells in our head, obviously. We've got brain cells in our heart. We've got brain cells in our gut. If we can tune into these things, there's incredible wisdom there. And I would sit in stillness, and I would kind of play through the situation in my head and think, going and getting another job in corporate. And I'd literally feel nauseous. Sounds a bit dramatic, but I'd literally feel nausea. I'd feel this, a rule of my body was telling me, no.
Not if you came from burnout.
Yeah, it's like don't go back there.
What a lovely reflection looking back. I mean, a couple of things stood out. How you kind of stumbled into that. You looked, you didn't find anything, then you ended up creating something. You went down a rabbit hole of reading everything, looking everything, consuming everything, and then turned it into this program. And I'm sure getting that feedback from a very clear kind of customer, that must have been so motivating. And so,
Yeah,
how long was that ago?
that was 2020.
That was 2020.
When I left.
Yeah.
I was teaching it before then, but it was 2020 when I left. I think I think it was from whom I got the feedback as well, because part of me was thinking, if I follow my heart with this, I've got to be relatively sure, right? I don't have 100 grand to burn here. I can't sit around and have a go at creating a business and maybe I'll find a client. That money was going to run out fast, really. So it's the first time in my life ever as an adult. I mean, even when I was a kid working in Deblin's place like that, I'd never not had a month where at least something went into my account. Strangest feeling. You know, I got to the age of 46 and then a month would go by, nothing comes in, the bills are still coming out, nothing comes in. It's quite unsettling.
Interesting. I mean, lots of people would think 46, too old to start something new. Others would probably maybe not even hear how their body is reacting to it, the feeling, because there's so much noise in the world and you just go with the safe option.
Yes.
So I was, when you were speaking about you listen to your body, I was thinking, well, you have to cancel out all the noise to be able to listen to that.
Yes.
And kind of rewind your brain. But a lovely introduction, Steve. Thank you. That paints the picture. A challenge for you.
Yeah.
Just imagine you've got a new prospective client.
Yeah.
It's the Minister of Education in the Netherlands. And he would like your ideas for a curriculum for high school students.
High school students.
And yeah, because I'm staring at a photo of my daughter. She's 3. But we'll unpack my stress and burnout and things in the coaching session in a minute. But I'm just staring at her photo and I'm thinking, like, I would want this integrated into curriculum when they start becoming older. I mean, 3's very young, right? But we still sometimes breathe together, sit together in front of her. She does yoga. There's a funny kind of yoga show on YouTube that we do together. But I'm just wondering about school curriculums and your take on that. So say as of the age of 12, maybe, you'd have a window of opportunity to kind of teach a class. What would you kind of think for that?
So there's a whole brilliant program that came out of Oxford called the Mindfulness in Schools Project, MISP. What they found is the biggest challenge with that, Peter, if we cut to the chase straight away, the biggest challenge is being able to find great mindfulness teachers to teach kids. Because one of the biggest problems they find is if they get great mindfulness teachers to teach the teachers, that experience is really good normally. Mm-hmm. But to expect to be able to teach a teacher who isn't really trained in mindfulness other than the training they give them, who probably doesn't have a habit that's been established for years and so isn't embodying this stuff like a mindfulness teacher would, for them to be able to pass that on to their students, it's not a hide into nothing, but it's an incredibly difficult task. I mean, that's the big challenge, right? So when it comes to kids, how are we going to find the teachers that are highly trained and experienced enough that they can pass on this incredible thing to our young people?
Completely get the challenge. How would you do it if you had a window of opportunity to go into a class? Someone would be watching how you do it. What would your approach be to train a class?
The first thing I would do is to drop all the words like mindfulness and meditation. I do this whether it's an adult or a child, actually. And I would get the kids to think about one moment in their life. You can do this right now, actually. Let's use the test dummy. So I say to people, so imagine one moment in your life, it could be, again, if you're a child, it doesn't matter, if you're an adult, it doesn't matter, where you felt peaceful, either peaceful, and it was a memorable moment, you felt peaceful, the weight of the world lifted just for a second. You could breathe. Just a memorable So you felt peaceful, maybe you were quite still, maybe you felt peaceful but you were doing something very energetic, maybe you were playing football in the playground, maybe you were skiing if you're older, maybe you were riding your bike, maybe you were petting your dog or you're stroking your rabbit. So something quite active, you're moving or you're running or doing something, but there's still an underlying sense of peace, right? And if we take a very slight digression from that path, if you look at superstar sports people, if we pick football, for example, somebody like Paul Merson, Tony Adams, Paul Gascoigne, these people who are deeply troubled off the pitch and addicted to drink and drugs and gambling, they'll all tell you one thing, Peter. There's one time in my life when I feel still, where there's none of this stuff touches me, and it's when I'm playing football, because you can't play football and think. You can't play football and be tortured by your mind at the same time, and at any level, let alone an international high stakes kind of game. You start thinking on a football pitch, the ball's gone. You start thinking skiing down a mountain, the chance of you falling over goes up massively. But let's bring it back to kids in the classroom. So I'd say to them, one moment where you felt peaceful, joyful, intensely alive, and tell me what that is, right? So then they say, I don't know, do you want to tell me yours, or do you want me to come up with an example?
Yeah, I'd say when I was walking my dog, and the condition was the task list that I have during a busy work week is kind of I'm in control of that. But typically during my dog walk, if I'm having a good kind of day and I feel like I don't have a tsunami of tasks waiting for me, then that creeps in. Then I can be kind of present in the moment.
Okay, so what does that mean, be present in the moment? Let's zoom right in on that then, right? Because we want to get away from anything airy-fairy today, and we want to get into
Yep.
We want to move
Yep.
from conceptual knowing to experiential knowing. I'm interested in
Yep.
people's experience, not just talking about words.
Yeah.
So let's zoom all the way in. So during that dog walk, what makes a dog walk for you? Tell me specifically a time on a dog walk where you've just gone, oh, okay, 2 seconds, very memorable. Tell me exactly where you were, what you were doing. What were you seeing? What were you smelling? What were you hearing? What were you...
Being aware whether I'm thinking of the past and the future and kind of intervening, and then maybe looking at the trees, the leaves, the sounds, the sunshine, and just very simple things around me. So my surrounding, that could create that effect on me. My dog, how my dog's walking, but it needs to be very simple.
Yes. Okay, perfect. So would an accurate summary be you were inhabiting your senses a lot more than you were before?
Yes.
Right.
100%.
Whether it's your sense of touch or smell or taste and the only question I'd ask, whether it's a child or you, would be during that moment, right? So we're going to zoom all the way in to, and maybe that feeling of peace was 2 nanoseconds, Peter, before your mind came in and said, oh yeah, but don't forget, you've got to do that when you get home, and you've got all these bills and things to worry about. Okay, but I had a glimpse of peace. I had a little bit of stillness, just popped his head up and just went, oh, and I felt it. And it was so nice. During that moment, if it's a nanosecond or more, during that moment where you felt that beautiful sense of peace, of stillness, of aliveness, how much thinking were you doing?
None.
Right.
I was more observing, kind of like yeah.
Right. So if now some people, just in case somebody listening back to this or watching this thinks, what are they talking about? I was absolutely doing a ton of thinking. I was on the beach in the summer and I was watching the sun setting, and it was peaceful, and I was absolutely thinking, because I was thinking, look at that gorgeous sun setting. Okay, so what I'd say to that person is you need to zoom in just a touch more, right? There'll be a tiny crack just before your mind comes in and interprets what you're seeing and interprets the piece of that moment. The otherwise incessant thinking in your mind, just the moment you went, oh, wow, oh, these kind of sounds we make when we see something beautiful, that's when the mind's gone whoosh, just very briefly, incessant thought, nothing. Maybe straight back into incessant thinking. So you talked about inhabiting your senses. It's very hard to really taste something and think. Think about a judge on MasterChef. All their attention's in their mouth. I'm tasting this. Or somebody drinks fine whiskey, fine wine, spends 500 quid in a bottle of wine, right? If that's your thing. You don't glug it down like a blinking glass of water while you're doing a podcast. You savor it. You smell the... Beautiful. All your attention's in your nose. Okay, that's a little moment of mindfulness. Your mind's quiet. All your attention's in your nose. There's no consciousness left for thought, because all your attention's in the act of smelling, right? The sense perception that is smell. Taste. I start to taste this wine. All my attention's in my mouth. I can really taste the different flavors. Wow, I'm totally there. So we're taking attention away from thinking, sometimes accidentally, sometimes deliberately if we're practicing a meditation. But if it's walking a dog in a common or wherever you are, every now and then, life will conspire to make you present, and it feels bloody good. Because that's the moment when you feel peaceful. That's the moment when you notice beauty. That's the moment when you feel joyful, and it's memorable and it's beautiful. And it coincides always with there being an absence of thought. Now, thinking may come in very quickly afterwards. And we're doing a lot of thinking these days, right? So these moments may be very brief. Now, when I say these things, one thing I should preface everything with, Peter, is don't believe a word I say on this podcast. And that's not to be flippant or try and be funny. It's because just see what's true for you. Don't believe me on this. Is it true that, I mean, if I said to you now, well, actually, the next logical step, so we've established that on your dog walk, and a child, whatever example the child would come up with. So I would say to the child, so forget any clever definitions of mindfulness or meditation. Mindfulness to you is when you're walking your dog and you feel the sun on your face and you notice the dog running around and you smell the air, and that's mindfulness. That's mindfulness. Doesn't need to be anything abstract. Doesn't mean anything weird. That's you, a real moment in your life right now.
I suppose it's so important that the students complete the end of that sentence, because then it's tailored to them. Then it's not someone telling, like, this is mindfulness for me and this is how it should be for you.
Absolutely.
It's their own unique angle of...
I need to make mindfulness meaningful for you in your life right now. It has to be something that you can relate to, that you can do. It can't be something abstract. It can't be something that we want to add to your should list.
And it should embrace the uniqueness of children, right? They're all completely different. They all have their own kind of interests and stuff. So, yeah I love that.
If we go back to your
that.
daughter, Peter, she will be incredibly mindful now.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking as well. Like, children have this already, right? They're not on the future thinking of consequences. They're not on the past thinking of regrets or whatever.
Absolutely.
They're effortless play and just, in the moment.
Yeah. And if you get them early enough, they don't even have a sense of self. A young baby, you see how that's just experiencing the world, just like an animal. There's no sense of self. Then a young baby isn't comparing themselves to you or what you have or what you don't have, and I am this and you are that. There's no separation there.
So we're unconditioning. We would be unconditioning something maybe we have learned to return to that kind of primal.
It's a coming back too for most of us, yeah.
Which is also interesting because maybe lots of people think they're missing something because they're not mindful. It's just a counterintuitive thought that maybe you have it all inside you. You just have to return to how it was.
Well, and people can understand on a simple level. Maybe let's try and make that a very simple statement, or as simple as it can be. I would say to people, the peace that you're seeking is already inside of you. It's just covered up. And it's covered up by the incessant noise-making machine in the head. It's covered up by the 100 pings an hour you get from your phone. It's covered up by the 24-hour culture and the digital revolution and everything else, and the entire world that's designed to give you not a single moment's peace. But the peace isn't out there. When you go seeking peace in the Ferrari or the 10-bedroom house or the holiday to Vegas, it's probably quite a futile search because it won't give you a real sense of long-lasting peace.
But it's the number one grab thing that we do is like the vacation's going to give it to us, right?
Yeah. But look, if you look at what a vacation does, a vacation just makes people more mindful a lot of the time. When you go on holiday, people will notice their surroundings more. We talked about inhabiting your senses on the dog walk, right?
Yeah.
What's the first thing you do? If I'm walking around Rome and we go to the Colosseum, when we go to the Spanish Steps, what do? I pay attention to it because I haven't seen it. I'm not walking around my own block here. Wow, Colosseum. God, look at that incredible thing. And the sunshine, I love the sun. I feel that on the skin. Smell the sun cream on me. God, that's nice. I'm inhabiting my senses naturally.
Yeah, the sunscreen. Yeah. Okay. Steve, let's enter the new section of the show, fact and fiction. I'll give you a couple of statements. You can decide is it fact or fiction and share a minute or two of reflection on each statement.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah.
Stress is always bad for you.
Fiction. I would say stress is like calories. You need some. You just don't want too many.
Okay, that sounded rehearsed. That was that was a good answer.
I haven't seen these questions before. Yeah, for me, stress is where growth is for everything, right? You look at anything in the world has to evolve through suffering, right? Whether it's an acorn that you plant that has to survive the wind and the drought and everything else to grow into the tree, or whether it's the butterfly that survives, or whatever it is in the natural world, it will be challenged and it has to evolve to survive that. And we have to be challenged to deepen. Anyone without any stress or any challenge they won't deepen as a person. They won't evolve as a person. There'll be no depth to them.
When I reached out to individuals who had a burnout and I knew they were in my industry and I reached out to them, there was one individual who I respected within the industry, has a brilliant reputation, and kind of I saw her as a leader and someone I can learn from, because they care about their team very much. And I thought, let's probe, let's see what happened to him. Let's also understand how he moved away from that afterwards. And he mentioned something that stuck with me. He said, like, that happened to me was one of the best things that did, because I've pivoted.
Yeah.
I'm now in a tribe, in a job, in a role, and I'm a completely different person.
Yes.
And I thought, when you're in the trenches, you're like, how does that help me?
Yeah.
But I thought, okay, wait a second.
There's deep wisdom in that.
Quick one from me. This episode is brought to you by Inner Buddies. Inner Buddies is a young modern company in the Netherlands. They're a spin-off from Maastricht University, and they do something rather specific and actually darn cool. So they study poop. They study the microbiome, they study the gut, and they do that through studying poop. So they studied my poo 5 times now over the last 3 years, and I must say I'm a complete convert. So since then, I've lost 30 kilos, I've beaten hand eczema, and I'm actually probably, as lots of people around you might say, a lot less irritable than I was, which is probably like a public service. So they send one of these test kits home to you. You go to the toilet, you put some data in the toilet, if you know what I mean. You scoop some of the data off and you mail it to them. And 4 to 6 weeks later, you get a personalized dashboard. Now, the dashboard shows you exactly what's happening on the inside. It shows your microbiome, what bacteria are thriving, which ones have gone AWOL, and how you can use nutrition and supplements to sort things out. Now, through it, I pinpointed low levels of certain bacteria, good bacteria, lactobacillus. I'm lactose intolerant, lacto, I get it. They make a topic that is very scientific, incredibly easy to navigate for us mere non-scientific folk, and they make it fun. So I've done it 5 times. It's surely not the last time. It's a bit clever, it's a bit strange, and it works. If you've ever wondered why your energy's low, why your skin's flaring up, why you're irritable, or why your third coffee is just not hitting right and you're running off to the toilet the whole time, your gut might be trying to tell you something, and Inner Buddies helps you listen. Go check out the boys and girls at Inner Buddies, www.innerbuddies.com, and use the code WellerGuts at checkout for a small discount. So, and by the way, we've just released an episode with COO of Inner Buddies, Crystal Creek. It's funny, it's fascinating, and slightly more comfortable than this ad is. So go have a listen, and to steal her words, poop it, scoop it, know it. Back to the show. I'd say the same thing now. Like, completely different, changed person. Like, more confidence. Still high stress levels. We'll get into the weeds in a minute.
Yeah.
High stress levels. But I'd also say that pivot, fantastic.
Yeah. You just got to make sure you time your question right? Because if you ask somebody in the depth of their suffering, you're grateful for this yet, Peter? It's going to be the most fantastic thing.
but it's still,
you make it.
It was, but I still thought, okay, that gave me encouragement, and we spoke about how to make that pivot happen and stuff. So, deep breathing and mindfulness can immediately reduce stress levels.
True to a point. I mean, if we talk about deep breathing, if you deliberately breathe in deeply through your nose and out through your mouth, you can shift from what they call the sympathetic nervous system, which is kind of a stress state of fear and tension, to a parasympathetic state, which is more rest, digest, peace. And you can kind of, I'm going to try and answer this really quickly. I know you said a minute. So your body doesn't know the difference between disaster or the thought of disaster, true?
Mm-hmm.
So we can flip that, and we can say your body also doesn't know the difference between being told there's nothing to worry about, even if there kind of is something to worry about. So if we can tell our bodies there's nothing to worry about by the way we breathe, that would be a great thing, even if we don't necessarily believe it ourselves. Sounds a bit funny, but if you're in a stressful situation, if you took some real deep breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth, what you're telling your body, so to speak, through that act is there's nothing to fear here. It's okay, we've got this.
I always thought that made smoking so tricky because, you know, an addiction, because you go outside and you do exactly that, right? So I remember having conversations back when I smoked and individuals around me smoked. And, you know, if you're smoking and you're going outside and you're doing these deep breaths, yes, of poison, fine. But, you know, you're going through that motion. And I always had the feeling that that adds to the addiction part as well, that they go outside, they do those deep breaths.
Yeah. You could be onto something, yeah.
Yeah,
I
I don't know if I am.
Sorry, people say smoking makes them more relaxed, right?
Yeah.
Maybe the breathing you do, I've never been a smoker, but maybe the breathing you do when you're smoking does kind of trigger this parasympathetic nervous system. If we take away even the nicotine and everything else that's happening.
Yeah.
Just the act of the way you breathe with that, maybe it just forces the system to slow down slightly. And the other thing you're doing, right, you're stepping away.
Yeah.
That's another thing, you're probably stepping away from a stressful situation, which is quite a handy thing to do.
Yeah.
Which gives you just a little bit of space. So yeah, I can see there'd be a lot of overlaps. I mean, if you could swap the cigarette for, and I'm certainly not going to say for a vaping thing, if you could swap that for a glass of water, right, and use that or something that's healthy.
Yeah, or just did the breathing exercises without the cigarette, right, and stepped away and preferably not stand next to a smoker while doing so. But you know, you just go away and do that.
Yeah,
interesting. Chronic stress rewires the brain and makes you more prone to anxiety.
I would say so. So we're kind of in the topic of neuroplasticity now, I think, aren't we? So neuroplasticity is this ability for us to change our brains, to rewire them, so to speak, based on what we do with our lives. And they studied this. Let's forget mindfulness and meditation for a second. They did a great study in London on the taxi drivers. So they compared the brains of the taxi drivers, and it's the men and women that are actually doing what they call the knowledge. So anybody unfamiliar with it, the knowledge is a test. I think it's still here now. If you see a proper black, I'm talking about the proper black taxis in London. I'm not talking about the people that pick you up and just type something into Google Maps. So back in the day, and it was more prevalent pre-sat-nav stuff, you had to pass a test called the knowledge. Really hard test. You basically had to internalize the map of London into your head. You had to know all the street names. You had to know where everything was relative to everything else. If you get on in Park Lane and said, "Take me to the nearest theatre," they'd know where it is. And to get the knowledge, to be able to be a proper London cabbie, you had to pass the knowledge. And they scanned the brains of the men and women driving the taxis to the men and women driving the buses who were just doing the same routes. And what they found was the hippocampus, the part of the brain associated with spatial mapping, was literally larger and more active, more online in the taxi drivers versus the bus drivers. So what does that tell us? It tells us, and if you take it outside of the brain, it's very obvious. If I said to you, Peter, if I go in the gym and I put something heavy in this hand and I go like that 20 times and I do that 4 days a week, see this muscle here, it gets bigger. Amazing. You go, of course it does. But we don't think the same. We don't think the same of our brain. We think, well, you know, when you're born with it, and he's always been a warrior. He's always going to be a warrior. But no, you can shrink the amygdala through a lot of mindfulness training. You know, it's not going to happen in 2 minutes, but it's the potential for it's huge, and all sorts of different things. You know, you're opening some beautiful doors here, because if you shrink somebody's amygdala, which is a freeze, flight, fight, then what happens is the amygdala will send a message to the prefrontal cortex, which is the executive part of the brain, right, which is the bit you need for making. Let's just take a simple example: making a right decision in a boardroom under huge stress. You need to have access to the parts of your brain to see the information to make the right decision, right? Whether it's in a boardroom. And there's a brilliant book called Peak Mind, which is where an American neuroscientist studies this. And she studies this in first responders and military people, where they're making life and death decisions. But let's bring it back to the boardroom. You need to have the people making multi-million-pound decisions in the boardroom need to be focused. They need to have access to the parts of the brain to make a decision. That's in the prefrontal cortex, the executive section. If your amygdala's running riot, it will shut the prefrontal cortex down effectively. Because
I describe that as my brain checks out. I have this regularly.
Yeah. So your brain's saying, well, look,
I'm in the room, but
yeah, why? I mean, I guess the reason is, Peter, because your brain says, well, look, sod making decisions. We just got to go into survival mode here, and we either need to fight our way out of this or run like the clappers. So, the essential bodily, non-essential bodily functions shut off, and just the pure essential get me out of here, fight, freeze. So, yeah, I think neuroplasticity. Well, I don't think neuroplasticity is real. It's been proven to be real. So I think anything we are what we practice, and we're always practicing something. So if that's practicing being anxious, you get great at being anxious fast. And the reverse must be true as well.
I also have to think of habits, mental habits, right? Like people usually think of habits in terms of doing stuff, but recently I'm thinking of habits up here, my thinking patterns, my kind of mental habits. And maybe that's something we can unpack in a minute when we look at stress.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good example with the cabbie knowledge test. I'm convinced that if I joined a chess club, not a stress club, I'm already a member of that. But a chess club in Russia for 6 months, I'd be using my brain completely different than I am now. And I think the same applies with interventions that
Yeah, I think
people like yourselves can offer individuals when they. That's basically what you have to be able to do, is help someone rewire their brain.
Yeah.
In 15-minute increments.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Last one. Exercise is one of the best ways to conquer stress.
I'd agree with that. Yeah, I think pick your pantheon of good things you do to conquer stress, and I'm not going to prescribe that list. I'm not going to say, you got to exercise. If you don't like exercising, fine. Go for a walk or knit or do whatever you want to do. But you want to be doing things that quiet your mind. You want to be finding things. Assuming your nutrition's great, assuming you're getting enough sleep, assuming you've got friends and support network and all that kind of stuff, then I think what people are lacking these days is an off switch for their brain, or a way of quieting their mind, having some space. There's no space. There's no space in our day, in our lives anymore. So if people go out running, and some people will say I go out running and it's when I do all my thinking, when I work through everything in the day. And some people will say when I go out thinking, I don't think about anything because I'm just so in the moment. It's just me. I feel the air coming in and out of my lungs. I run along the beach. I just see the sea. It's heaven, because I can get away from everything, including thinking. So it depends how you use it, I think. But I think just tiring the body, I think burning up. If we look at animals, right? If we go back to animals, how do animals relieve stress? There's a beautiful story in a book called The Power of Now, which is one of my favorite books ever, by a guy called Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah.
And he says there's two ducks on the lake, and he observed this, right? So two ducks go too near each other, and there's a fight. There's disagreement, blah, blah, blah. There's a fight. Now, as soon as that fight's done, they turn away from each other, and both of them come up on the water and flap their wings vigorously, like as a strong, and then they go straight back to peace, straight back to serenity. Now, what we know is that duck isn't going back and saying to the other ducks, "You'll never guess who I bumped into on the lake. Couldn't believe what he did. We've had a massive wait till I see him tomorrow." Blah blah blah. Right? It's done. It's gone. It's back at zero. And so if we're calling it an emotion is probably a bit strong, because they don't experience the thoughts and emotions like we do. But that emotion in a dog and in the duck, and if we use your dog for an example, when your dog gets scared. After the threat is gone, they will literally shake it off.
Yeah.
Like they shake when they're wet.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it's to release this energy that we call an emotion. So they have this. Your dog will be experiencing fear. They don't want to carry that around. It's not good for them.
Yeah.
So how do you let it go? Shake it. You literally shake it off. And I think there's something to be translated into human exercise and shaking it off, so to speak.
I love it. And we were also back at individuals completing the end of that sentence that you would ask the children.
Yeah.
So exercise is good for some, but find your own. You mentioned the sunset. For me, I was straight away thinking, what would be my top 3? Number 1 would probably be cooking, in terms of my go-to.
Yeah, nice.
Because that's where I'm very present. After a run, I hate running, right? But I love the feeling of that running gives me afterwards.
Yeah.
So where I really challenge myself.
Yeah.
And I think the other one would be dog walks. But there still, my mind, most of the dog walk, I'd say maybe 95% of the dog walk is me just thinking through things, planning ahead.
Okay, so let's get into a tiny bit of coaching then on that.
Yeah.
So what the first thing I'd say to you if I was coaching you about your dog walk, firstly, try and set yourself up for success on it. And what does that mean? I mean, you could do the practical things like leave your phone at home or in the car, whatever. Try to avoid distractions. Certainly take your earphones out if you're wired into something. But probably the biggest thing, Peter, is to bring attitudes of kindness and compassion to yourself, and to set yourself up for success on that dog walk would be to say to yourself, do you know what? I'm going to go for a walk for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it is. And for a portion of this walk, a portion, not the whole thing, I'm going to try and inhabit my senses more. I'm going to raise my gaze a little bit, and I'm going to notice the tops of the trees. I'm watching there's two birds on the roof here now. So I'm going to just watch them, and they're kind of doing their thing, and one standing on one leg. Amazing. I'm going to be present. I'm going to notice them.
Interesting. No, because you said raise your gaze a bit, and I noticed just when I walk, I often look at the floor when I'm kind of like,
absolutely.
My world becomes smaller, and because I'm up here.
Yeah. So it's a nice little mnemonic, raise your gaze. Because we often, even if you're walking around the block, most people will see things on rooftops. Two reasons I say to people, raise your gaze. One, most people are head in the phone or head looking down. And so when you bring your head up, it kind of opens your body up a bit, I suppose, as well, which is kind of a nice thing physiologically. But if you look up, the higher you look up, the less stimulation there'll be. There'll be a lot of stimulation in your phone. There'll probably be a lot of stimulation at eye level. And as soon as our primary sense is vision, and 40-odd% of our brain is dedicated to processing that, the reason people close their eyes when they meditate is to take that sense away. And so if you're looking up at the sky, for example, there's not a lot. I mean, if I describe the sky looking out this window now, there's clouds, there's some little patches of blue, there's trees in the background, there's rooftops, there's two birds sitting on the roof. That's it. There's not a lot of fuel for thinking. Right? If I was walking through Piccadilly Circus, if I was walking down the street here, there'd be cars going by, and there'd be kids riding their bikes, and there'd be somebody walking their dog, and then there'd be this, and there'd be that, and then there'd be the bin men collecting this, and there'd be... So my mind's like, ting, 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 ting. Raise your gaze, might help you quiet your mind a little bit. But I'd say to you, back to the dog walk and the tips on that, the biggest tip's going to be to say to yourself, Peter, I'm going to try and inhabit my senses a little bit, whether that's just hearing my feet on the crunching through the leaves in this time of year, whether it's feeling the sun or the cool air on my face, whether it's feeling my breath coming in and out of the nostrils, and I mean feeling the breath, the sensation of the breath coming and going. You can do that one right now. Just feel it, the sense. How do you know you're breathing in this moment? Answer that question by sensing it. But the bigger thing would be to also then say, and you know what? If my mind thinks, it thinks. And if I spend this entire dog walk lost in thought, is what it is. And I'd invite you to discover what happens when you do that. Because you may well find, if you give your mind a long leash like that and say, do what the hell you want. If you want to think, knock yourself out, go for it. Very often the mind will go, can't be bothered. But if you say to your mind, you need to shut up, I need to be present on this walk, I mustn't think, oh God, my mind mustn't, and you get all tense and tight, and just like holding a ball underwater, you've got no chance. And if you fight your mind, there's only one winner, and it's not you. So sometimes these little tips can be massively helpful to people, because just a different intention on a dog walk, and then your different pep talk, just as you start, the mind's busy. Okay, I don't mind having a busy mind today. I'll do my practice and I'll do my thing, but if the mind's busy, it's busy. And see what happens.
What would you do to narrow down my stress levels if we want to kind of like figure out how stressed someone is?
I would probably ask you to write down 10, 15, 20 key activities in a typical day for you. I'd let you interpret what a typical day means. And then I'd ask you to write down 10, and I do this with people on my course. So, we don't tend to do it right at the start. We tend to do more foundational stuff first so that we can apply them when we do this. But you'd end up with a list of 15, 20 lights. You know, I get up, I check my email, or I get up and I go for a walk, or I get up and take my shower. Then I go down and eat my breakfast. Then I'm straight into my emails. Then I commute to work. So you've got all these different line items, right? It's not just get up, work, watch Netflix, go to bed. And then I'd ask you to write a letter next to each one of those things. And I'd ask you to write a N if it nourishes you. If it typically lifts you, if it typically makes you feel calm, centered, happy, if it's a nourishing thing, write N next to it. If it depletes you, if it typically makes you feel stressed, if it typically makes you feel your mood is lowered, write a D for depleting next to it. And if it depends, because you may say, well, email could be either. It could be a fabulous email from my boss telling me I just got a 10 grand pay rise, or it could be an email from my boss saying, you did an awful job, come and speak to me. So if it's that, then you can put N/D. And then I'd ask you to look through, well, what's a typical day in your life right now, Peter? You've got more D's and N's. What does it look like? Is it how you expect it to look like? And what can we do about it? Then we can get into, okay, well, here's an accurate picture for you, yourself. Kind of a little easier way of measuring
I'd say...
It's hard to do without actually doing it.
No, but the majority would be depleting,
right?
For sure.
Okay.
And it ties into a discussion I was having about calendars. I used to color my calendar green if the task I'm doing in that meeting puts me in a flow state.
Oh, okay.
Yellow if I'm on the fence, red if it's energy draining. But then I realized every red meeting that I'm going to, I'm already primed to be a grumpy.
Right. Yeah.
So I stopped doing that. But I'm working on my calendar that with one quick look, I can identify what kind of a week I'm having. So I learned this from another guest on the podcast, Kate. And what she does is blue is work. Yellow is life, a dog walk, a lunch with a friend, etc. Green is learning. And in my case, I'm using exactly the same. And then purple is the podcast. But if I stick with that, in one quick look, I can look at a week I'm having.
Yeah, nice.
I haven't looked at a daily activity. So that's a nice step that I can definitely do, almost like a stressed audit.
Yeah.
Which it is, which I love.
Yeah.
I've done something similar in terms of what am I spending the time in my week to, and do those align with my life strategy and those kind of things. But I haven't zoomed into a day in increments what I do and the activities. But 100% it's as simple as that. More sessions, more time, and elbows out, kind of conquering time in your calendar so that you can introduce tasks that re-energize you. For me, it's, cooking. We already mentioned a physical activity and dog walk, but I think I really need a kind of a structure there, because my calendar, and I'm sure lots of other people are the same, if you don't defend it, it just gets filled by other people's stuff. So I'm almost at the state where I want to just claim these yellow bits.
Yeah.
And, book them already.
Yeah.
I'm just not available.
And what I would say to somebody, because I've worked with some extremely busy people, like ridiculously busy, never seen anything like it. And for them, we have to find ways of lowering their stress. We're back to not doing different things, but by doing things differently. That's what we're back. So we can't carve out 10, 15, 20 minutes in your day where you can go and sit and practice, or go and have a lunch break, or go and do it. Then we need to be piggybacking the things you're already doing and allowing them to lower your stress, to quiet your mind. For example, I kind of alluded earlier to the fact that you cannot fully inhabit your senses with your attention and do a whole bunch of thinking. And that extends to just breathing. You cannot be aware of the sensation of your breath entering and leaving your body and think at the same time. You're either doing one or the other. So what I would say to people is, next time you're at a red traffic light, and you could ask yourself this question: am I breathing? Now, don't answer that question. Don't answer that question, Peter, with your mind. Because when I say your mind, I don't you mean you personally, I mean our collective mind, so to speak. Because the collective mind will say, am I breathing? Stupid question, Jesus Christ. Of course I'm breathing, I'm sitting, I've been breathing since the day I'm born. The mind says that, right? Well, no. Am I breathing in this moment? You've got to go inside to feel that. Feel it right now. Am I breathing? Yeah, I am. Because I just felt the in-breath come in. I can feel the cool air as I breathe in. I'm staying with it, my attention. Slightly warmer as I breathe out. And I could follow all the way down to the belly, or I could stay at the nostrils, doesn't matter. But am I breathing in this moment? go inside to figure out, yeah, okay, I am. Right. So in the act of observing that breath, witnessing that breath, sensing that breath, I'm not thinking. So I'm stood at traffic lights, I'm waiting at traffic lights, and for 2 seconds I quiet the mind. I push a button for the elevator, instead of taking my phone out, I quiet the mind.
I love that because with a calendar that's already full, those kind of tiny interventions
Yeah.
are achievable.
Yes.
Absolutely. You can do that even in a meeting.
Yes.
Right? You can do that, and to top up the battery or top up the glass just a little bit,
It will help with everything. It'll make you a better listener, and it will help with everything.
Because my number one excuse is like, okay, I haven't got the calendar time planned in, so I'm not going to, it fills itself. I'm not going to be able to do that. But that reduces the bar to so achievable.
Absolutely. Yeah. I have to come prepared with these things, right? Because otherwise the execs are just going to say, don't have time.
Yeah.
Did you have time to practice? No. Okay. But you did have time to walk up the stairs or drink your coffee or stop at the red light.
And also thinking about me now, maybe the bar should be different, because I straight away go through the whole week needs to look perfect. I need to see that I have a life. I need to see that I'm learning. I need to see this, but also maybe applying that, maybe just one day where I have a defended chunk in my calendar where I either go for a run, like do some cooking, or some kind of recharging exit, but where I look at one day where I kind of reclaim that space, and just start practicing one day.
Things you won't regret on your deathbed. That could be number one on your list.
For sure. For sure. If you think about coaching me and you have the sense, okay, the guy's got some levels of stress, where else would you want to go?
Tell me more. What do you mean exactly? Can you give me a specific situation or scenario?
Yeah, I've got loads of triggers. So triggers is having quite high standards, which is a massive strength.
So a very strong inner critic.
Sorry?
A strong inner critic.
Yeah, but also for outside things, like just projects, quality, these kind of things.
Okay.
Also inside, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I see it as a massive strength, because usually the qualities are fantastic.
Yeah.
But it comes with stress, and the stress is amplified when you have to work with other individuals. You have to learn how to speak the same language, kind of, and get on in the project.
Yeah.
And we mentioned about thinking. We spoke about thinking earlier on. I'm very strength aware. So my number one strength is strategic thinking, right? But that comes with a massive, when we spoke about mental habits and kind of thinking patterns.
Yeah.
So my antidote for situations is to think about different angles, so that it's so ingrained with me that I'm 10 steps ahead. And that if I have to kind of go back steps when working with others, for instance, that can be frustrating. That can be a challenge. That can be a trigger. But also, and that's not just to mean, working with others is a challenge. That sometimes is a challenge.
Yeah.
Sometimes it goes effortless if you speak the same language. And but also at night, if I'd had a stressful day, I've always described, and I don't know why, quietening my mind like a fly banging against the light. And there's something that I'm chewing on that I haven't figured out yet, or some kind of stress factor that needs to be dealt with. And when I was experiencing burnout, it was actually so bad that there was no specific thought. It was just that stuck in that mode.
Yeah.
And anxiety of going to sleep, the same thing, because I knew the result wouldn't be good. And so similar to what you mentioned.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to reflect, like, yes, sometimes working with others is a trigger. But I usually find a way, and usually there's but especially depending on the culture of the company, people ask the right questions when they collaborate. They find ways to collaborate together. So that's a trigger, but also just me, myself, and I. There's also triggers. Going to bed when your mind's racing, and the antidote for problem solving is always thinking. Being able to pull the plug. I also described it as the lights are on, but nobody's home. At night, during burnout,
Yeah.
that's how it would be. Like the lights are on, but nobody's home.
Yeah, it's like sitting in a car in neutral and just revving the hell out of the engine.
Yeah.
So I think there's lots. I mean, there's all of this would be addressed in a good 8-week mindfulness course. So if we looked at the strong inner critic, the antidote to that would be self-compassion. So a lot of strong inner criticism, a lot of it, at least for me in my life, could be described as drinking poison and expecting someone else to die. So if I'm frustrated at somebody else, or if I'm bearing a grudge, or if I'm still worrying about that guy who cut me up in traffic 2 days ago, I'm drinking poison and expecting him to die. And he doesn't even know it, right? So there's kind of that on one level. There's an even deeper level than that, and it depends how deep you want to go in this podcast. But underneath that is the level of you're never upset for the reason you think. So something triggers you. If a guy cutting you up in traffic triggers you, you're not upset because a guy cut you up in traffic. Because that same thing could happen another day when you just had a fantastic day and he'd cut you up and you'd go, whatever, don't mind. So it can't be the act of being cut up in traffic. So you're not upset for the reason you think. You're not upset for that reason. There'll be something underneath that. There'll be this emotion you've been carrying that hasn't been fully dealt with and is bubbling away. And you're just looking for an outlet for it, right? People that go into bars and looking for a punch up. It's because there's anger already in there, and they're looking for someone. Just somebody look at me the wrong way because I want to rip someone's head off. If you have a fearful dream, if you have an anxiety dream, the anxiety causes the dream doesn't cause the fear.
Can you say that again?
The fear causes the dream doesn't cause the fear. So if you go to bed and you're full of fear, your body's full of fear, your mind will try and interpret that in the sleep, and it will say, what can we do with this? There's a lot of fear here. I can feel this frequency of fear, so to speak. It's a palatable frequency of energy in the body, isn't it? It's an uncomfortable. Everyone's felt it, right? This tension of fear.
Then the mind directs the movie to associate with the feeling, right?
Yeah.
It fills the empty space.
Absolutely. Mind says, what do I do? Okay, it's a scary monster doing this. Or whatever, right? So you don't go to bed beautifully peaceful and calm, and the mind says, oh, let's have a scary monster tonight. Let's check him in. So most of us are carrying all this stuff, and if you study Eckhart Tolle, he would talk about this, all the emotion that we've repressed and not dealt with and suppressed in our lives, whether it's small things or big things. He would describe it as pain body, just this energy, if you like, that lives within us and kind of rears its head every now and then. And
I think I'd know a couple for me. I think being misunderstood, being not seen.
Right.
I think those are big ones for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think being misunderstood, not being seen for who I am.
Yeah.
That's a big one for me.
Yeah. So I think self-compassion would be massively helpful for you specifically. It's a big one for me, Peter. And here's a nice kind of, I mean, when people think of self-compassion, especially men, they go, oh God, that sounds so soft and pathetic and weak, or maybe it's just a night, I'm an all right guy. I don't, go around hitting people and kicking dogs. I'm all right. I don't really need that. But a lot of people are quite unkind to themselves.
Oh, I'll give you an example. I mean, I recently, over 3 years, lost 30 kilos through cooking.
Wow.
Through being very healthy. That's the weight of my daughter, my son, and probably a crate of beer.
Huge.
And just rewinding back to being, so I've gone from the obese category, flown over the overweight category to the healthy category.
Brilliant.
And if I rewind to me looking in the mirror, like that was pretty unkind. And also completely unreasonable, because you'd say, I need to be thin. Or the body can't do anything in that moment.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that kind of image of, and you so often look into the mirror. Yeah, I mean, that's the first thing that came to mind with self-compassion. Like, well, yeah, now it's better, but it's still weird looking in the mirror.
And a lot of people find it very, it feels very contrived. It feels very false. It feels very fake, right? So what do we deal with that? So I'll tell you one quick story about self-compassion. When they flew this guy to University of Wisconsin, they put 256 sensors on his head, and they scanned his brain while he was meditating, and they found that the activity in his left prefrontal cortex was so high left relative to the activity in his right prefrontal cortex, which is one scientific measurement of happiness, right? They said this guy's the happiest man in the world. And what was he meditating on? He was meditating on compassion for himself and others. So you could loosely say that, scientifically speaking, if you want to get yourself in the happiest state possible as a human being, meditate on compassion. And that's just an amplifier. That's just like giving somebody a present at Christmas on steroids, right? Or pushing their car out the snow on steroids. It feels good. We love it whether we're the person sitting in the car with a group pushing them out. But
would you accept if I added gratitude to that list?
Yeah.
Because I noticed that strategic thinking, I'm always looking at opportunity or usually risks and things that can go wrong. And gratitude is completely the opposite.
Absolutely.
There's so much to be grateful for, but the fly goes straight to the lamp and starts working on it.
And why does the fly go to the lamp? Because let's translate it to a thing everyone can understand. I need to pay more attention to threat than beauty to survive here. I need to pay more attention to the busy road near my house than the beautiful sun setting behind it, because one of them kills me and one of them doesn't. So we've evolved to just notice threat. If I notice threat, I survive, I reproduce, or I've got a chance of doing it. If I stand there gawping at the sunset, I get squashed, I get eaten, I get whatever, right? So we're kind of semi-hardwired to notice threat above pleasure and above beauty, but that can be massively kind of skew-whiffed, if that's a terrible way of putting it. But that can be all we do. And so people say to me, "Oh, gratitude. What is that?" Well, I'll tell you what it is. It's not pretending everything's amazing, but it's doing tiny little things. It's admitting to yourself that, yes, I had the most awful day at work, but you know what? There was 1% of it that was quite nice. My mate rang me up and made me laugh. My wife sent me a picture of my daughter. I took my dog out for half an hour. And for 2 minutes of it, I felt like it was nice. So 99.9% of my day was bloody awful. But still, even in that day, there was a tiny thing to be grateful. But the mind will throw that away, even if it's 50-50 or 25-75. Most minds will throw the good stuff away and go, yeah, but you didn't do that well.
Yeah.
Or you didn't, if you send people 10 emails, 9, Peter, you're fantastic. 1 out of 10, Peter, this was terrible. You dropped the ball with this. This is awful. Can we speak? What do you spend 3 hours that evening thinking about?
So true.
So we have to point our mind in this direction. Now, this isn't about some Pollyanna fake, just trying to think positive, just trying to force positive thoughts into our head. That doesn't work. It will only take you quite a limited way, actually, because that kind of implies suppressing negative thoughts and pushing stuff away, which has nothing to do with mindfulness at all, and I'm very unhealthy. But what we're saying is, can we incline our mind towards the positive hour every now and then? Can we just point it in that direction? Can I, when I'm on my dog walk, just as I'm walking around, can I think of 5 things I'm grateful for? And start with the tiniest thing. I woke up and the heating was working. It felt quite nice to wake up in a warm house. I've got coffee. I drank that. That tasted nice. I've got a nice warm coat. I'm walking the dog. Not, I got a 10 grand pay rise. I'm just ordered my latest BMW. I'm going to Vegas for 3 weeks in summer. Forget all the big stuff, because your life is made up of tiny moments. And that's the tiny moments you'd miss the most, Peter. There's a brilliant quote from a lady called Brené Brown. Have you heard of her?
Yeah.
She says, paraphrasing massively because I always get these quotes wrong, butcher them, but something like, I get so busy chasing the extraordinary moments that I miss the ordinary moments. The moments that if I lost, I'd miss the most. The tiny moments when your child laughs, the tiny moments when your dog licks your face, the tiny moments when you just feel at ease out walking.
It's what you chatted about when you looked at that bench and you were talking about someone not there anymore and how much that individual would give to just walk on the beach again.
Everything.
I don't think they'd wish for a BMW in that moment.
Yeah. What use is that to them? I learned that with my nan. When my nan was very old, and in her last couple of years, I realised very, very profoundly then that material things can mean nothing in that moment. There's nothing I can buy. There's no fancy dress or handbag or jewellery or this. It's utterly meaningless. What's the most beautiful gift you can give anybody, regardless of their age or wealth? Your attention. And your attention doesn't mean your time, because you can sit with somebody in the same room scrolling your phone. It means giving them your full attention. When people feel that, whether it's down a screen like this, or whether it's in person, they feel it and it feels beautiful. Now, Silicon Valley take this and they twist this, and they know, Peter, that your attention is the most valuable commodity. That's why there's limitless scrolling. That's why they hook you in. That's why they want you, because if they got your attention, they can get to your wallet as well. Which is why if people watch The Social Dilemma on Netflix, it will scare the hell out of you, because even the SVP's in there saying, this is a beast, and we admit it. This is, we want people to be addicted. We want people's attention as much as we possibly can, and we do anything to do that.
Just before we close off the coaching session, can you give me an example of self-compassion, how to practice that?
Yeah, so there's some great guided practices. And it would normally start with something like you just kind of settle yourself, ground yourself, maybe taking a few breaths, feeling the weight of the body in the chair, maybe noticing sounds in your environment. So just to kind of quiet the mind a little bit. And then I'd say to you, bring to mind somebody whom you love, not somebody you're romantically involved with, but maybe a child, or it could be a pet, it could be your dog. And let's offer them a few words. So we'd kind of say this under our breath, so to speak, and just see how it felt. And we'd say, may you, as if you're talking to this person or this animal, as you picture them, may you be safe and free from suffering. Really just imagine them. May you be safe and free from suffering, kind of seeing that. May you be happy and healthy. May you live with ease. And then I said, just imagine them really happy. Imagine whoever you're imagining, whether it's a person or an, imagine them just deliriously happy. Imagine them having the best day of their life. Just, you can see them. You can see where they are. You can see what they're doing. They're so free of stress. They're so happy. It's beautiful. It's such a beautiful... And of course you'd wish that upon them. That's a rhetorical question. So then we're saying to them, may you be safe. May you be as happy and as healthy as you can be. May you live with ease. Just seeing that. Seeing how it makes you feel and noticing that. And then I'd ask you to turn that slightly on yourself. Take a time. May I be safe. May I be as happy and healthy as I can be. May I live with ease. Because then it gets harder, right? Because then the barriers go up. And if somebody's listened to this and says, the barrier goes straight up, I can't offer it to myself at all, I'd say to that person, if it just gets as far as the barrier, that's fine for now. Let it hit the barrier and we don't need to try and push it through. Just offer it to the barrier. If it gets blocked, fine. You may find as time goes on, that barrier gets weaker and weaker and it kind of crumbles and it can go through a bit more.
Great example. I love it. I was completely in thinking about my daughter, my son, how seeing them move, etc., and kind of this effortless moving, walking. And yeah, completely. If you think about yourself straight away, there's a barrier for sure. Right,
the self is the hardest one.
Such a good exercise.
Yeah, because you could then introduce somebody neutral, somebody you see in a shop, don't really know their name, but then you could do a group. So if we're on a Zoom call with 20 of us, it could be all of us wishing each other well, see how that feels, and then you can open up to all sentient beings. That's a tough one as well, right? Especially with what's happening in the world right now. Can we wish these people? And it's not about saying they're great people. It's about saying that in their essence, there's an essence that's good in them, whether they're acting according to a different level of quite severe unconsciousness in many people, which is very destructive and very harmful. Ultimately, underneath all that, there's an essence that's probably just like the essence of pieces inside you is covered up. The essence of kind of good has probably been covered up in this purple, depending on the lives they lead and what they've been exposed to and everything else. So it's not about pretending good people are bad in that sense, or what they're doing is good. It's about trying to see a slight more depth to it than that.
I really like this. Just to reflect of the coaching that we just had. I think a big reframing in my mind was the starting small when it comes to this. Mm-hmm. That maybe not the entire dog walk, but maybe a stretch of the dog walk is where I do something or try something. Yeah. But also towards my calendar, maybe one day instead of the whole week, where I conquer some space for myself. Yeah. The exercise that you gave in terms of an audit, an activity audit. Yep. You go through all the activities that you do in a day and which ones are deducting from your bank account and adding to your bank account. But then we're talking mental stress kind of bank account. Yeah. Yeah, and the big one that stood out is this kind of thinking, what you mentioned earlier, but if you're thinking, you can't be kind of present. And there are these activities that we can learn and hopefully that are great for us as individuals that kind of shift the thinking, well, quieten the thinking or completely like divert the electricity from going to the thinking part to the experience part. That's how I kind of imagine it. And that's something I definitely want to practice more. And self-compassion and gratitude, I wrote down in my book. I think self-compassion is a big one. I think gratitude is probably easier for me to be grateful for things in my life. Yeah. That's there's so much.
Yeah.
Any reflections from your side?
I think it's been a great conversation.
We've got
quite deep quite quickly, but that's all good.
Good. If we think about the individuals listening now, and maybe the individuals and me, because you coach me, but maybe we think of both those audiences, if one can say, and say we're on the way to work and we're driving in the cars and we see this massive billboard from Steve. What would your message be to those individuals? And your message to me, maybe it's the same one.
Tough question. I would probably want people to realize, I think the greatest thing you can realize in this lifetime is that you are not your thinking mind. Is that there's the ability to witness, to observe, to watch the thinking mind. And the watcher of the mind is you fundamentally in your essence. And it's a place of peace and it's a place of stillness. So that which observes anxiety isn't anxious. That which observes sadness isn't sad. And if you can at least touch that place in you or spend some time there, it's the most beautiful place to be. That the worst death sentence in this life is to be so consumed by your thinking mind, take your entire identity from there, and be lost in automatic pilot until the day you die. So freedom from this world is the liberation of realizing that you're not your thoughts, you're not the emotions, and spending some time acknowledging and practicing that and seeing where it takes you.
So I'd see a formula, you, and then the equals the stripe through it, your thoughts, and then a little star with a bunch of caveat text underneath.
It's like when they do that thing at a radio advert.
But no, inspiring stuff. Maybe in terms of tiny habits, if we could think of tiny habits or making something so easy and small, if you think about an audience challenge, a parting challenge for the audience, just to dip their toes into the pool to see the temperature kind of thing. When we're talking about mindfulness and stress management or diving into that, what would a challenge be you would like to leave the audience with?
I mean, the biggest problem with listening to a talk like this is just nodding your head and saying, I get it, being more present. That's when I feel great. Okay, I get it. And thinking that the act of knowing that conceptually is going to take you through. It's going to take you nowhere, unfortunately. So it has to translate to inviting this stuff into your life more and practicing it. That's the only way you're going to change anything. So that can start with, we talked about earlier, just stopping at a traffic light. Every time you hit the red traffic light, that's the trigger. You could have a tiny sticker in your bathroom mirror or where you make your tea in the morning. It doesn't need to say anything. It'd be the tiniest sticker. And it could just be a note to just almost say, Peter, how present are you now? If you're making your tea, just really taste the first sip of it. Just really smell your coffee just for 2 seconds. Keep it very small, but try to interrupt your day. You talked earlier about being frazzled and you not being able to sleep. There are some great meditations for sleep. One of them is called a body scan. It's a beautiful way of quieting your mind and switching off at night. But you have to rewind far, far more than that and say, can we drop little moments of mindfulness confetti throughout your day so that you're quieting your mind as you go? Otherwise, it's incessant thought. Right, how do I shut the mind down to think, to sleep? Well, hard, really hard, and then you haven't really practiced. So if we can go incessant thinking, back into incessant thought, no thought, back in, becomes more normal, becomes more natural. You're peppering your day with something beautiful. And if people think, well, it's not such a big deal, you're right, it's not such a big deal. If I smoke one cigarette now, it doesn't do anything, does it? I don't drop dead of some horrendous cancer disease. If I smoke 30 a day for the next 10 years, who knows? Same with mindfulness. Taking one conscious breath in your car at red traffic light will do nothing, absolutely nothing. And your mind will tell you, what waste of time, that idiot on the podcast didn't know anything. If you take many conscious breaths in your day over the next 3, 4, 6, 8 weeks, then let's see what your watch says about your resting heart rate. Then let's see how you feel. Then let's start to measure this. But please don't measure it. Don't zoom in and measure it too soon. Do it for the reason most great mindfulness courses last 8 weeks is because that's the tipping point at which physiologically you can measure change. Whether it's functional MRI scanners, heart rate variability monitors, all this kind of stuff, right? So patience is needed. Start small. Find a great app. Find a great book. Find a great teacher. And you want to stick with it long enough to start to see the benefits. It's not going to be easy all the time. It's certainly not going to be quick, but it'll probably be one of the greatest things you do.
It also requires that reframing. Also with the weight loss journey I was on, I was looking for the one thing that if I tweak the one thing, it's going to all drop off. And it's difficult to think in terms of these minor things that together compound.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I also think Mindfulness Confetti deserves its own billboard. So maybe we can pick that one up in the next session.
All right.
Steve, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
I feel coached. I want more. Thanks so much for spending time with us today, and look forward to our next chat.
Likewise. Take care. Have a great weekend.